Thank you everyone for joining us. This is the Anything Everything podcast, hosted by Tarek and myself, Sami. And today's topic is about billionaires and billionaire status. Tarek, what do you think about that?
Billionaires. Yeah, should they exist? Should they not exist? That is the question, to be or not to be, but in a billionaire sense. So I'm going to start by telling a bit of a story about a Japanese company called Nishia. And their president and founder, Nobuo Ogawa. So that's, my brilliant Japanese pronunciation. So Nobuo Ogawa is a founder of a company called Nishia, and they do like lights and stuff like that. Now, there was a problem back in the 1970s and 1980s where they created LED lights, and those LED lights were red, or later on they became green, but people were never able to create the blue LED light. So LEDs back then were never used for commercial lighting purposes or lighting in houses. It was always the traditional light bulb, which is like a filament that gets heated up and emits light. Now, the problem with the traditional light bulb is that it's extremely inefficient. So there were so many people and companies that were fighting to create the blue LED, because once the blue LED comes into existence, blue, green, and red combine and become white, so you can have a white light, basically, if you have the blue LED. Now, this company had someone who worked with them called Shuji Nakamura, and Nakamura was an inventor, right? And he was obsessed with finding out how to create the blue LED light. So there's a lot to it. I'm not going to go into how it got created or anything like that, but he worked for 2 years nonstop, every day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., except on New Year's, like literally every single day. 7 a.m. and he's trying to create the blue LED. Now, the company and the owner of the company, the president, Nobuo, kept sending him letters and telling him to stop, because finding out how to make a blue LED is fruitless. There have been a lot of very intelligent people trying to create the blue LED, and it never worked out. Until Nakamura hit the jackpot. He got his eureka moment, and he created the blue LED. What happened was the company, Nishia, went from, $1 billion, $2 billion company, and in about 10 or 12 years to over an $80 billion company because of the blue LED and because of Nakamura's invention. So the reason I'm telling this story is because Nakamura was a salaried employee. And he was earning about $30,000 a year. When he created the blue LED, Nishia, the company that he worked for, doubled his salary to $60,000. He got no money for the invention of the blue LED. And everything that you see around you right now, the LED lights, are because of him.
So that's his patent or IP, you could say?
He created it. He's the creator, but the IP belongs to the company because he created it while working for the company. So Nobuo Ogawa, the president, became obscenely rich on the back of an inventor that he hired. So, and he's a billionaire.
Okay.
So what do you think of that story? Is it fair?
That's an interesting one. So he created the product. Did he use any of the company's, systems or testing or research?
No, he created his own machine to create the blue LED light. But what he did use was the company's money.
Okay.
So the company was paying him while he was trying to create the blue LED light.
Paying him a salary for a different...
salary, yeah.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't seem like his parent company had any direct investment into the research and development.
They wanted it to stop. They kept sending him letters telling him, listen, what you're doing is pointless. We're paying you a salary, and we know that you're just going to hit a brick wall.
Wow. So they opposed it and then took credit for when it broke through.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And the thing is, Nakamura, went to the US because he left the company Nishia after a while, and they parted ways, like, not amicably. He left the company to the US and he started consulting for other LED firms, so that they create the blue LED, which made it become very commercialized. But Nishia, the original company, sued Nakamura for going and consulting with other companies. So what Nakamura did is he countersued Nishia for using the LED and getting super rich without compensating him. Nakamura won the trial, but the money that he got from winning the trial was barely enough to cover his legal fees. Like he didn't, you know, but now he's well off because he has his own company that's inventing stuff. So he's not a poor person, but yeah, the person who benefited from his invention is Nobuo Ogawa, the owner of Nishia.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the point of, so the ethics of being a billionaire, right? If you're profiting off people's backs, you're still kind of enabling them by paying them that money. But does it make sense that there's such like an unequal compensation, right? Like,
or imbalance
yeah.
No, I can see it. I can see that point. Is in a sense, when a massive company has access to resources, has systems in place, has a market value, existing value, brand, and it can piggy bank, or a new creator, a new inventor can piggy bank on that and reach certain success.
Yeah, piggyback. Yeah.
Piggyback, sorry. Is it ethical for it? It comes back to the system that we've put together as the capitalist system, economic system, where, and there's a term for it, like the Matthew effect, that the rich get richer, the poor get poorer.
Yep, which is still happening.
Which is happening. So where do we draw the line between, is every situation, I'm sure every situation has its nuances, but in this case it seems like it's completely his idea.
Yeah.
From at least the brief overview of it. It's his idea. He put the time and effort to get it, and then they took credit for it. And that's, I guess you could say, justice was in his favor ultimately, but not to the value.
Yeah. And I just want to give a quick shout to a YouTube channel called Veritasium that has the physics behind the blue LED.
Okay.
And that story was briefly mentioned. So if you want to understand how it actually happened, watch that. But the point is, the point that I'm trying to make here is, I don't think you can get that rich, like billionaire status, without stepping over people.
Yeah. Okay, so there are the number of billionaires, right? And I think the US is still the most country, the country with the most billionaires.
The country. There are 3,200, 3,300 billionaires in the world.
Okay, I think US and China, I think, are leading that. Maybe Russia's in the mix as well.
US, China, yeah.
And it seems that, at least, like we've spoken about some names that maybe we can touch on. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, to name a few. And they all seem to be, Mark Zuckerberg as well.
Yeah.
It's heavily in technology, isn't it?
Recently, it's the tech giants.
It's the tech giants, at least in the past 50 years, if we're
there are others, like Warren Buffett, not really, but there are the millionaires that are either old money, billionaires, that are old money, or in traditional financial billionaire systems, aren't as vocal or visible to us, but there are still a lot of them.
No, of course.
But the ones that we see the
industries.
most, that are most visible, is because their influence and tentacles, let's say, kind of, they go through almost everything we do on a daily basis. Permeate is the word I'm looking for, yeah.
Every fabric of society. So when we name drop these gentlemen, you have Elon with Tesla and other companies, the Boring Company and so on, and then SpaceX. Steve Jobs, Apple. Steve Jobs also, when he died, he was a billionaire.
He was,
Bill Gates, Microsoft. Now, if we try to rank them on the scale of kind of really self-made and a creator, and that's where I think people would kind of side with the idea that you've earned. I know it's not us to judge, right? But
so
you've earned it in a way, very loose definition. Or
there are different ways to become a billionaire. So
And we're not talking from experience, obviously.
yeah, but it's just when you hear about how people became billionaires, you can kind of understand. And I think the most problematic billionaire is the extremely unethical billionaire that got to their status because of corruption of some sort. So either they're gaming the system a lot, or they are
Inside information, or
yeah, or they're engaging in money laundering activities, drug trade, sex trafficking, human trafficking. Those billionaires exist. They do it on the low, they get super rich, and they have cover companies that are used for the money laundering and to show who they are. Not going to name drop people here because those would be allegations. Like I'm not going to,
no, absolutely.
but there are people who reached that status. Now, from the ones that have had a more, I would say maybe like earned approach, Warren Buffett is someone that, you know, is worth talking about. So he came from humble beginnings generally, but he was always interested in kind of selling stuff and investing and doing that thing.
Yeah.
So he went and he worked for Berkshire Hathaway. It used to be a textile company, but then he became the head because he worked hard and ended up becoming the president of Berkshire Hathaway and then owner. And he turned it from being a textile company to being an investment company that takes other companies that Warren Buffett sees promise in the founders and in the idea and invests in them long term. So we're talking about 1965 is when he started doing that with Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah.
He didn't become a billionaire until 1990.
Yeah, I think he was about 60 or over 60 at
Yeah.
least. So at least for him, out of the people we named, it took him the longest.
It did. It took him a long time, and it was just slow and steady wins the race. That's how he played it. But then his wealth started, you know, exponentially growing as he hit 1 billion, because the more money you have, because he created such a good system for himself, he just amassed also what I would call an obscene amount of wealth. But the thing about Warren Buffett is he is committed to philanthropy. He's gonna, according to him, give away most of his wealth when he dies to philanthropic causes. So like schools and education stuff and medical research, all of that kind of thing, which I think is a good thing. But getting to that point as one human being doesn't sit very well with me when you look at countries in Africa and countries in Asia that are hurting. Like the people can't even get food and water. And then you have someone with hundreds of billions of dollars.
That he's never going to spend multiple generations on. But then, okay, here's the question. Does he have an obligation? Because to him, short answer could be no. And you can say that, okay, why is your philanthropy targeted only in the US, for example? It could be, it might not be.
Yeah.
But then, does it tell us something about our innate desire to accumulate extreme wealth?
I think it's a human condition.
Right?
I think greed is something that is very innate and intrinsic about a human being. And most humans, no matter... Some are more altruistic than others, but all of us are greedy. Like we want the things, you know, more and more things generally.
Yeah.
That's why people buy lottery tickets. Like why would you want to get super rich, right?
Yeah.
It's because of that aspect of greed. You also want the comfort that comes with money, sure. But
Status.
the thing is, and study after study shows that once you reach a certain amount of money, you earn a certain amount of money, the more you get, you're not going to get happier. You're not going to get more content.
Happiness is one, but then your lifestyle really doesn't really change, I think, after... Because happiness, I think, is
so
one
your
level.
lifestyle doesn't change after a certain amount, but also
But
contentment
before that,
and happiness.
the happiness is before.
It doesn't change either.
Yeah.
That is an intrinsic thing. But something keeps driving people to get more and more and more. You're trying to fill a hole in yourself that is not going to be filled with money or success or status.
Yeah.
So that human condition is ultimately, and obviously capitalism and the way the market works, is ultimately what creates billionaires in our world.
True.
I don't like the idea of billionaires personally. I can't say that they are obligated to give their wealth to anyone because I don't think that they should be obligated. I think that for people that have this amount of wealth, they should want to do good to society and to help other people.
And give back.
and give back.
But then, okay, so the argument is against this slightly is, do we want governments to intervene more and, put more, drive more taxation
I think
on
so.
wealth, inheritance tax, right? And so on, or corporate profit on certain, but like for someone like Buffett, from what I've read, these people and him and others, they see this wealth accumulation as a game. It's a game
It is a game.
that you're always playing. It's as we say in other areas, a rat race. So and Warren Buffett invested or sold his first business or developed not developed a company, but maybe sold his first business or first endeavor when he was like 12 or 13.
He did, yeah.
So he's been in the game, the financial game, for decades. And as you said, it took him till over 60 to become a billionaire. So he's been in it for the longest ever, I would say. And there's an element of luck as well.
Well, there's definitely luck that plays a part, yeah. But there's a lot of grit, determination, and hunger that comes with it as well. So good or bad, it's hard to say. But I think, at least in my opinion, governments should regulate billionaires more. But there's a problem, a very fundamental problem with that. Now, if you look at a country like Norway, I believe that they have a taxation system that really, I'm not going to say punishes, but taxes very, very heavily if you become a very, very high earner.
There are constraints.
Yeah. So it kind of doesn't let people get to obscene wealth, and it equates. That's why Norway is a very rich country, is because the wealth is always spread. It's not really localized. America is one of the most unequal countries in the world. And in fact, let me look at this because I saw it in a study. The top 20 richest Americans own more than 1% of the entire country's wealth. The top 20 people. And the country is what, 300 million, 350 million?
Yeah, over 300 million. Okay.
And that's insane. That should not be happening.
How much,
in my opinion?
The
1%.
The top 1% own?
No, the top 20 people.
20 people, individuals.
The top 20 richest individuals in the US own more than 1% of the money in the entire United States.
Okay.
Wow. That's so wild.
That's
man.
ridiculous for just 20 people.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where the fundamental issue lies. And I think, yes, taxing the obscenely rich very heavily definitely helps. But on the flip side, to play devil's advocate a little bit, does that come at the cost of progress? What do you think?
That's the thing. And to argue for that, against the idea of progress, because some people might say that, well, these people shouldn't be rich, right? There's this shouldn't argument that they shouldn't be because of the example you said, that people in Africa or other parts of the world, because the majority of the world are living below the normal means of living, poverty and the like.
Correct. Yeah,
right?
They're below the poverty line. So many people.
Okay, so let me take the side of advancement, technological advancement. There's a need for that because great advancements always seem to be on the back of great sacrifice and suffering. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And I think the term is called creative destruction, is that you really need to, there's a competitive angle to it, is that, for example, Nokia, it had to fail for other, companies like BlackBerry or Apple or Samsung to take over. So there's always suffering, and we see one level is on another company, but the other level is how many iPhones are made in China? Aren't all the iPhones made in China?
I'm not sure, but yeah,
there's
a lot of them.
Right, and the whole angle around sweatshops, right, for other products.
Yeah.
So do we stop that because of the conditions, or do I really want my Nike and my Adidas shoes? So that comes down to that. So it's not an absolute. It's a very, very gray area.
Yeah, it's hard to really figure out where humanity should be standing, because the opposite end of the spectrum is the pure Marxist/communist view, where everyone gets an equal share of everything.
Then there's no iPhone.
And we see how that pans out.
Yeah.
Like we saw when human beings try to do something like this, it just backfires. You still have the players that get insanely rich, and then you have the common people, which all are kind of not motivated because there's nothing to progress to. So if you're going to suppress people who are visionaries or like really good at making money, maybe you're hindering progress a little bit as well, because those visionaries, so let's, for example, Elon Musk, very contentious character, like, right? Some people really hate him, other people love him. I think he's very interesting. I don't love him or hate him, have to say, but I do think that he's a pioneer, right? And he is definitely a visionary. He was an inventor from when he was 12, very interested in computer science and then programming, invented a game at 12 years old, like software game,
Really?
sold
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he started a company with his brother called Zip2, I think. Yes, Zip2. And they sold like maps and directories and stuff to newspapers. So that company did really well. And they sold that company for 300 million after a few years.
Okay.
So that's how Elon Musk got started,
Yeah, it's a
technically.
big break.
There's a lot of people who talk about how his dad was an emerald miner in Africa and Elon got rich off the back of his father. Not completely true. Definitely his family opened up a few doors for him. I think most people would have opportunities due to the people they know. So you can't really fault Musk for that. He's definitely a visionary that got really rich based on his own money. So after that, selling Zip2, he made PayPal. PayPal took him to billionaire status. Then he got SpaceX, Tesla, etc. What we know him, the boring company now. So someone like Elon Musk, very, very polarizing person, but now has so much influence that he can, with one tweet, change how the stock market works.
A dent in the market, a dent in the universe.
Yeah.
And
And that's absolutely insane. But had he been suppressed by insane taxes, would he have ever really went in on Neuralink or SpaceX, which I think if they do well, objectively are better for humanity. Neuralink is making disabled people walk again, potentially. A SpaceX can make us a spacefaring civilization, which is good for
it can
humanity.
commercialize, space travel because he's building rockets cheaper than NASA, basically.
Yeah.
That's what
I think those are good things. But also on the flip side, for SpaceX, for example, to launch his rockets, he goes into some rural areas in China and he destroys villages. Like, he doesn't destroy them, but like the waste from his rockets and stuff like that are really negatively affecting the villages. So to your point, progress, suffering is on the back of it.
We just
like
don't know how
there's
to
just
do it.
like a yin and a yang, right? A balance.
Yeah.
If you want a lot of progress, there's going to be a proportionate amount of suffering.
Because of that, it seems like it is a bit absolute or binary, because maybe the lesson is that we just don't know how to make great progress without suffering. That's maybe the fault
I think
of
there's a
humanity.
different question.
Okay.
Can you make great progress without suffering?
You'd think yes, right? Without going into the specifics.
But think about it a different way. Let's take a different concept. Happiness. Can you have happiness without sadness? Does happiness even make sense without sadness?
I think it's much more complex, for sure, because I mean, one is more emotional, the other is more, about, society and economics.
Think about rich and poor.
Okay.
Can there be a rich man if there isn't a poor man?
No. I think because it's zero sum.
Yeah.
But
and I think it's the same with
I
think it's the same with progress and sacrifice.
No, I certainly think that when it comes to wealth, it is zero sum, right? Is that there's a share that, someone's taking from someone, ultimately.
It's not exactly like that, actually. Like you can have people who, sure, there are people that'll be less benefited, but generally if there's progress in a direction and it's like ethical, like a company comes in, it's a really great invention, it's gonna trickle down and make everyone's lives better.
Okay.
So whoever made the invention and the company, sure, they get a disproportionate amount of wealth, but the wealth generally increased also across the population on average.
Really?
That does happen, yeah.
There's societal productivity and societal advancement, but it's on the back of somebody. Because you've replaced someone. You must have replaced someone. There's never a case, at least from memory, where there's an advancement without someone taking the back seat.
Sure, I agree with that.
In that sense.
I agree with that. But what I mean is the progress is disproportionately better than how the negatively the people who sacrificed were affected.
Okay.
You know
the
what
net
I mean?
Positive.
Like it's a net positive.
Okay.
Not a
perhaps.
zero-sum game.
No,
is
okay.
what I'm trying to say.
In that sense, yeah. So it cancels out a little bit, but yeah. And you can argue that as society accepts it, because when it comes to products, it's put out in the market, and your feedback from the world is that they accept it, they embrace it. So they want it, and therefore they are feeding the wealth back into that company.
They are, yeah.
They are.
So it's a very difficult subject to tackle.
Yeah.
It doesn't change what I believe, but I think that if a billionaire should be really devoted to bettering the lives of people who are less fortunate, is my opinion of that. But I don't know, honestly, I can't even tell if I become obscenely rich. Maybe that greed part of my humanity really starts taking control, because there's a huge, very famous saying that power corrupts.
Absolutely.
And with that much money comes also a proportionate amount of power.
And there's no indication, honestly, between you or myself that if we're at that level, we would be different.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a fallacy for us to say otherwise.
Yeah.
Because every time throughout history, someone has accumulated that amount of wealth, and generally in history, looking back, it's mostly men. And I actually have an example on this, is that one of the wealthiest men in the Roman Empire was someone who's a bit more obscure in the history books, Marcus Crassus.
Crassus, yes.
You've heard of him?
He worked with Caesar quite a bit as well.
Exactly. You could say he was the financier of Caesar.
Yeah.
And not as, successful militarily, but wanted that success. But he accumulated vast amounts of wealth to the point that in Rome at the time, they didn't have something as simple as a fire system, or fire company. And there were almost fires daily in Rome. And he was the only person. What he would do would take his people, or his workforce, to a burning building and agree with the owner of the building that you should pay me to put out your fire. If you don't, I'm going to let it burn and I'm going to buy it on the cheap. That's what greed does to you.
Yeah.
That's what it does. It could do it to any of us.
Yeah.
Who's to say that? And he profited so much because of that. He bought up all real estate. He let things burn. He was involved in slave trade at the time, right? So what can we say? Now, to bring it kind of home a little bit, this point is that what we've done in a way is we've created an economic system that mimics nature in a sense, where there's a competitive angle to drive progress, and it just clashes with our personal ethics that are very, very personal and are kind of focused, right? Personal moral framework. And capitalism will always clash with that. I think that's just where we are, is that we can't tailor our personal ethics to an economic system or capitalistic system. And we tried going down, as you said, the Marxist route with communism, and we just obliterated it after the Cold War.
Yeah.
That's not what we did. So the world kind of put that across capitalism, and we said, nah, we don't want the USSR. We don't want their style of economics. And this is where we are now.
There's this dichotomy, right? There's a battle, there's a dissonance in human beings where we have the competitive, very competitive nature inside us, but at the same time, we have the compassion and the empathy.
And we can't find a way
and those two clash.
They do.
Just by definition, they clash, right?
Because it's ruthless, the capitalism.
Competitiveness is ruthless.
It's ruthless.
Like if you want to be the best, right, at whatever, you're gonna want to, like in certain situations, you're gonna have to beat others. You're gonna have to win, and by winning, you have losers. So,
and it's not a competition with very nice, cute rules. It's brutal. It's like,
brutal. Yeah, it's cutthroat.
The loser dies. The loser is eliminated. Winner takes all effects. Right.
Yeah.
That's what we create. And monopoly is a symptom of that, and the power of monopolies is part of it. But this is what we can do because we are designed based on nature to operate in that mean.
We are.
Those are our processes without delving into them too much. But that's just, it's innate in us in a sense.
It is, yeah. It is like someone like Jeff Bezos, right? Founder of Amazon, also humble beginnings.
Yeah.
But he became a successful finance guy on Wall Street. And then he saw how the rise of the internet was going. It was going up at like 2,300% a year or something. So he went and he founded Amazon, 1994, I think. And he's like, I wanted to sell books. He found out that books might be the best thing to sell, went well, obviously started selling other stuff, became this e-commerce giant. But what Bezos does, or did, because now he's not the CEO anymore, was he created a marketplace where anyone can sell on Amazon. So let's say there's a yoga mat company that kind of have a new fabric or something that they invented that's really good for yoga. They started selling on Amazon. They're selling really well. Bezos and his team, they see that and they're like, you know what? We can make this yoga mat and sell it for cheaper and kind of push these guys out. They make the yoga mat, they push it on their platform because it's their platform. And that yoga mat seller goes out of business. There are tons of stories like this.
Sure.
Is that ethical? Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think so. I think that's, you're bullying. You're a bully. You're a bully. That's literal bullying. And that what drove Amazon's growth to insane numbers, basically, right? So they did that. They also exploited workers and laborers. Like there are stories of laborers in Amazon warehouses having to wear diapers because they're not allowed to go to the toilet and leave the warehouse from, you know, all that shipping and fulfillment stuff that they do. So I don't know, man. Like it's hard. And but when you listen to Bezos and you hear him talk and stuff, he doesn't seem like an evil person. There's this idea that billionaires have to be evil to become billionaires. I think it's a lot more nuanced than that. Sure, I don't think they should technically exist, but I don't think they're inherently evil. But they still do evil things.
That's the thing. So are they just a number of acts that make you evil, or is it the accumulation of the acts? Who's to say? Who's to judge?
I think, for me at least, evil is the lack of compassion. That's a much bigger topic, though.
Yeah. We can expand on that.
I don't think, you know, that we have even time to talk about evil and the mechanics of good and evil, and even if they just exist. It's just a philosophical construct anyway.
It is.
But, yeah.
Okay, maybe taking this a little bit differently. Most of the world aren't billionaires. I think a lot of people won't ever be billionaires.
Yeah, you're very, the likelihood of you ever becoming a billionaire is infinitesimally small.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a billion is a big number, right? I think we don't understand quite how much a billion is. And there's this concept that I recently started, reading about. It's called the time billionaire.
Okay.
Have you heard of it?
I briefly, yeah.
Okay. So I'll start off with a question. What do you think the amount of time 1 million seconds is?
1 million?
1 million seconds.
1 million would be probably like a few weeks.
1 million seconds is actually 11 days.
Okay, 11 days. So not a few weeks, 11 days.
11 days, okay. Try and guess how much 1 billion seconds is.
Oh, so it'll be 1,000 times 10. So it'll be 10,000 days?
10,000 days. In years? Rough.
In years, that's a lot of years.
That's a lot of years.
Yeah, so that's 30 years, 40 years?
Close. 31.7 to be exact.
That's insane.
So like, and again, when you look at it like
between a million and a billion, right?
Yeah, you might think that, okay,
like
1
when
million.
in your head, intuitively, a million is close to a billion, but it's not.
It's not at all.
Yeah.
And there's this gentleman who was on Tim Ferriss's podcast who name dropped this kind of terminology, and he coined it, the time billionaire.
Okay.
And what he says is that, well, a child that's 20 years old has about 2 billion seconds remaining, and someone who's at 50 has about 1 billion seconds remaining. And his reframing of that is a sense that, in a way, a time billionaire holds more value than an actual monetary billionaire. Because if you would go to Warren Buffett and you tell him, would you trade $1 billion for 1 billion seconds? He would probably agree.
Dude, I think he'd trade 99% of his wealth for 1 billion seconds. For 30 years?
Right?
Yeah.
So the idea is that I think the lesson to ourselves and the younger generation is that okay, your time. The common saying is time is money, right? I think that's wrong because time is actually much more valuable than money. You can't get back time.
Yeah,
You can
can't.
always get back money
Mm.
if you have the amount of time, or you can get back some money, right? It's relative, but the view around this time billionaire, sorry, is that okay, you should value your time because it's finite. It's like essentially when everyone's born, the clock is just counting down, and you never know, right? But assuming things go well and you live a normal life, when you're 20, you have 2 billion seconds. So I think the lesson is that you can take risks. You should take risks. Is that you should value your time in that sense, and you can reinvent yourself multiple times. So I know it's a bit of like massaging the idea that everybody's a billionaire, in a sense.
Well, every young person's a
Every
billionaire,
young
right?
person, and even when you're 50, you still have 1 billion seconds. If you take care of yourself and so on.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah,
If nothing happens.
But then, yeah, how do you see it? Do you see it in a different way? How do you digest it?
So sure, it's an interesting concept. 100%. It's nice to look at it like that. It gives people a different perspective. And I feel like if you would ask a very rich old person if they would give a specific amount of their wealth to take time back and get younger, I think all of them would say yes, or most of them. I don't know if all of them would say. I know I would definitely say yes.
Yeah.
And if I'm asked, or if most people who are young are asked if they trade places with Warren Buffett and get his wealth, would you say yes? I wouldn't. I'm like, sure, it'll be good to have that amount. I don't want to be 87 or however old he is. I'm not sure.
He's above 90 now.
He's above 90.
He's
Okay.
above 90, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's we're all time billionaires, and time definitely matters more than money. So make the most of your time.
Yeah. It's the most precious resource. It's something you can never, get back. And the idea that there's this kind of, pushing of youth that somehow youth, again, when you're in your early, adolescence to teen years, you kind of have the world figured out, right? You have a bit of an illusion that, oh, I know stuff and I know everything.
Yeah.
And you're fearful of the future. When the future is actually in your hands, is that you can dictate so much. You can reinvent yourself 3-4 times, over. And you should value your time and take risks to learn. Because that's what some of these gentlemen we've spoken about, Charlie Munger, who was the partner of Warren Buffett, they just threw themselves into learning, into taking risks, into developing. Like Berkshire Hathaway made as many fuck-ups as successes. On their
Definitely.
Right? So,
definitely. But, like with successes, especially when it comes to companies and money, one success can cover for 20, 30, 40 fuck-ups.
Exactly.
Like, and the fuck-ups get hidden by that success. They get completely overshadowed. Like, you just see the success. You don't see the fuck-ups. But also for 100%. Warren Buffett, it took him 1 billion seconds to become a billionaire. So he used his time billion, but he ended up with money billions, right? But in the end, time is just a one-way arrow. Like you can't, like you said, get back time. You're going to get old and die unless Neuralink or Elon Musk invents some way to upload your consciousness to the cloud. But whatever, that's probably
come back to us with that.
Yeah. But so you can't get time back, and it's important. It's important to have that kind of frame of mind as well, where use your time wisely.
No,
for sure.
100%, right?
Yeah. And I think all billionaires, there's, even with rich people generally, there's almost, most people have an obsession with youth or trying to stay young and stuff like that. They want to get the time back that they're using. Maybe part of losing that time is what keeps people driving to accumulate more wealth and more wealth. Maybe the greed aspect of humanity is because how finite your life is. Like the clock is ticking. You're not going to have 1 billion seconds to live at some point in your life. So you just want to get more and more wealth to kind of make something of whatever you're losing, which is time.
Okay, so kind of justify how things are going ahead or how you're losing time.
Yeah, so
or give you a purpose.
You're trying to take something back because life and the universe is taking time away from you. You're marching inevitably towards your death. Let me take all the money and wealth I can. Let me win. Let me be the best that I can be. I think if you're immortal, that kind of would go away generally.
You
Like
lose the purpose. You lose the drive.
I think so.
Probably.
So that's a really nice way to tie the whole concept of like time and time billionaires to actual billionaires and money, because I think that feeds their greed.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them kind of, maybe from the readings, they have this in mind as well, right? Because they know that you only have this one shot.
Yeah.
So they've
One
kind of
opportunity.
instilled this, right? Yeah, to use Eminem, to
Yeah.
quote Eminem. And I think someone like Warren, in a sense, if I'm getting this correct, is a little bit different because he just started so early.
Yeah.
So he literally, you know, like religiously abided by time in the market because it just took him so long to become a billionaire.
Yeah.
A lot of them, Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates,
They shot up very quickly.
Bezos, I think in 4 years became a billionaire.
Yeah.
You know, that's crazy. It's you know, but I don't think it'll ever happen. And some of them, I think Elon Musk or Bezos are on track to become the first trillionaire actually. So I don't know if we'll do another episode about trillionaires when they do hit that status.
I think there'll be one initially, and then slowly there'll be more. But yeah, trillionaire is just, if you think billionaire is obscene, imagine what a trillion, like, oh my God.
How many zeros is that? The trillionaire.
Yeah. How much time is a trillion seconds? Think about it that way as well.
Oh my God.
Like if a billion seconds is 30 years,
So
a trillion
1,000.
seconds is 30,000 years.
Yeah. Oh
So
my
yeah, a trillionaire, don't even like, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't even want to go there. And I think billionaire is obscenely rich. Trillionaire is just beyond ridiculous, in my opinion. But like for Bezos, for example, he bought the Washington Post.
Mhm.
So imagine like how much influence these billionaires have under the covers, even politically. Like, is it really a democracy when a few people are really moving the needle? The billionaires of society, those with the most influence.
No, 100%.
Yeah, you know, when Google threatened Australia, they for like because of a political thing, they're like, we're gonna stop operating Google in Australia. Australia panicked. Like it's crazy how much technology has infiltrated what we do to the point where conglomerates and billionaires can really threaten countries.
Yeah, they dictate a lot, and it's economic warfare essentially.
So I don't know if that's ethical. I don't know if that's just or if it should happen. In my opinion, I don't think it should. I think democracy is really important. But I also think progress is really important as humanity. So that's the battle that's inside me as well. It's the same one between compassion and progress or competitiveness. Like,
yeah, we need to somehow marry the two, and we haven't found a way to do it, because our personal ethics will always clash with the ethics of the system. It's just that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah. Would you ever want to be a billionaire if you had the option?
I'm not gonna say no because that's just gonna sound inauthentic.
Okay.
Yes, but do I need to? Of course not. But if the opportunity presents itself, yeah, why not?
Okay.
And challenge me on my philanthropy if I'm ever there. Maybe you need to be that, soundboard and critique.
I mean, I'm saying this now. It's easy for me to say this because I'm not rich by any means. I do well, but maybe if I become really rich.
So what would you do? What would you do if you're a billionaire? Is that what we're coming to?
Well, I hope that I would be a very philanthropic and someone who starts companies and initiatives to really make the world a better place. That's who I'd hope to be.
Yeah, I hope so. But the thing is, okay, think of it this way as well. Is it when you hit that level, you are effectively outside, your former self in terms of social status.
Right.
And you stop being able to relate. You stop seeing things the way you used to.
I hope I don't, man. That's the thing. Like, you know how they say the rich people become very out of touch with what's happening with the everyday life.
There you go. Like
I
they
hope
asked,
to never have to never reach that point. And maybe our where we grew up and stuff like that might help us a little bit as well.
Hopefully.
Not to forget that piece, but
evidence is against you, man.
Yeah.
Sadly. Like they asked Bill Gates in a famous interview, what is the price of milk carton? He couldn't answer that. And people destroyed him for that. And okay, in a sense, you might say, okay, does he really need to? And in another way, you can say that, okay, you're out of touch.
Yeah.
So it's not right or wrong. It's just, this is the situation. So yeah, so there's a bit of that, right? There's a bit of both angles. Is that, dude, come on. Like, you're completely out of touch. Like you probably can buy or create a milk factory. You can create your own type of milk, your own flavor of milk.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
And buy out all the milk in the world and right multiple times over.
Yeah.
But so there's a bit of that, like the evidence is against people that become ultra rich. And in terms of like the bracket, I think, so you were saying that there is a bracket around happiness, but there's also a bracket around what your wealth can do for you. And like, I think after 50 to 100 million, it doesn't matter anymore, in a sense.
Even that is crazy money. Like 100
Exactly.
million is crazy money. But yeah, like what are you gonna do with it?
What do you need to do?
But in
Buy
my
an
opinion,
island.
if you do reach that wealth, I would want to build schools in communities that are in need, build medical facilities, try to create sustainable food production in countries where famine is and thirst. But I mean, I just say that now.
He's on the record.
I say that now. And, there's a huge chance that I never get rich. So, and I'm not saying I really want to. Like, I don't have that missing in me, but I do have a very strong competitive drive to be the best I can be. So I do want to win.
That's how it starts.
But I also really feel like I'm someone who would want to give back. But I can't say that I will because I don't know what kind of person I'm going to become. Hopefully power doesn't corrupt me, but I don't know if I'm strong enough to resist that sort of, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. Because you're not really critiquing yourself at every stage. Time is passing by while you're changing.
And you change as a person. Like, you're not the same person today as you were last year, for example, right? So I just hope I don't change for the worse if I do get power/money at some point in my life.
Let's see. Time will tell.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say? Should we wrap up?
Yeah, no, I think that's it in terms of, the points I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
I think, it's an interesting topic. It's certainly, it's philosophical, it's economical, it's a bit personal as well. It's about, and psychological in a sense, because of the aspect of greed that's within us.
Multifaceted.
Right. So it's not an easy one by any, means.
Yeah.
Let's just see what happens with the world and how this is where perhaps we need governments to play a greater role in regulation. And again, that's very high level. But I think part of it is around, the widespread deregulation of certain systems.
I think so. It's very difficult now because of how that influence of the billionaires is running through governments right now.
Yeah, like in Europe, I don't think you have the same trajectory of billionaire status.
Yeah, you don't.
Like in the US.
Yeah.
So there's an example there. There's a case study that, I think the most recent was the LVMH gentleman. I think Bernard, I think.
Yeah.
Who became, I think, over 100 billion now in wealth. So he's like the first one European, I think, of recent, history. But the US, every 1 hour or something, there's a stat around that every 30 minutes to 1 hour, there's a new billionaire. Something like that.
Oh, okay. I haven't
I'll need to check it. But there's definitely that metric in a sense that, we're creating billionaires all the time.
Yeah.
So let's see.
We will see. Yeah. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed watching this episode.
Yep.
Great conversation.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah. And we'll wrap up here. Make sure to subscribe.